So today's project, we are going to be refinishing these rims off of the GMC Jimmy. They obviously need some love, got some rust on them. We just want to repaint them, and I'll show you how to take these wheels apart and how to actually paint these up so they look near factory, or at least look a lot better than what they do right now. So what I'll do is I'll break these tires off of this vehicle and take you to taking apart the rims. With our wheel now disassembled, I'm going to take everything completely off, shine up as much as I can, paint it, replace these if I can find them somewhere. But what I need to do now is wash this rim, so I'll get all this old bugs and stuff that's been trapped in here forever off of this and clean, and then we'll move on to sanding and prep for primer. So once your rim has been cleaned, you want to take your wet dry sandpaper. I always use just 400 grit and use light pressure and sand out all the imperfections, all the rust, everything out of the rim. Just like so. And I'll go around the whole rim, taking it down as far as I need to get all of the rust off of it. You want to use very light pressure the whole time. Okay, the sanding is right where I am happy with it. Obviously, the more you do, the better it's going to look. A lot of this stuff is going to be covered up by trim pieces. I took this trim cap and also sanded it down. I'm going to have to polish it as well, just to bring out, the nice polished finish. But what you want to do is make sure that all of the surface is really dry and clean. What I recommend doing is getting some kind of cloth and going around these really tight edges just to suck up all the moisture, and then use a tack cloth afterwards to get all of the debris or anything that was left over on this rim before we paint it. So what we will do now is take our painter's tape and run a line around this rim so that I don't paint my tire, and we'll get ready to prime this rim. With the masking done, we are ready to apply our primer. I use rust converter primer just because these rims have been out in the weather a long time, and any little rust spots, I don't want them coming through in the paint. So with any primer coat, any paint coat, you always want to apply the first coat very lightly, just so you have a tack coat. So I will let that cure up, and then I'll come and apply about 2 more coats of this primer. So I've went over this primer coat. We have 3 coats on here. As you can see, I got down pretty close to sanding all my primer off right there, which is totally fine. I just had a high point where I had too much buildup and the primer started to drip, so I wanted that to be flat. We have our base coat. And similar to what you did with the primer, make sure you shake up the can adequately and then just do a light tack coat. just ever so lightly, just starting to cover. So that'll start to get tacky here in about 5 minutes, and then I will put on probably another 2 to 3 coats of base. You want to give your base coat about 30 minutes to dry, depending on temperature and humidity. But 30 minutes is a pretty good baseline until you apply your clear. And the reason you don't want it to sit for days to cure is it'll get too hard for this clear to stick to. You want a really good bond between your clear coat and your base coat. Then you apply your clear the exact same way that you applied your primer and your base coat, just a thin, basically tack coat for the first one, and then I do 2 solid coverage coats after that. So I will let that sit for about 5 minutes. I'll come to a second coat, fairly heavy, and I'll let that sit for about 10, and then I'll do the final coat and let that sit for about 12 hours before putting this back together and into service. So here is the rim out in the sunshine, right there. Turned out nice. Clear coat set up nice overnight. Everything looks good. Center cap's back on. Got new chrome lug nuts to replace, you know, these old ones that I have on here. But yeah, I've got the last 3 rims to do. So this is obviously the before to the after. Significant difference. 20 bucks in paint. $2 or 2 hours a rim, pretty easy project. Very happy.